These men didn't have that, but research tells us very clearly that children who come from high-risk backgrounds, who have positive role models, and these are people in their community. You know, it doesn't have to be big names out there, as it were. But positive role models help vulnerable children beat the odds. If we look at all of the factors that are most strongly associated with rape perpetration, there are a lot of them, but these are the ones where there's a lot of research to support what I'm going to tell you now. Childhood sexual abuse. Okay? About a third of all boys and girls, but particularly boys, who experience childhood sexual abuse will go on and become child molesters themselves without intervention. That's a fact. Okay? Witness of parental intimate partner violence. Little boys watching mom being bashed around by dad, boyfriend, older brother, uncle, doesn't matter who. Okay? Big tick for sexual violence later on in life. Attachment disorders. Okay? When children are beaten, when children have inadequate parenting, inappropriate supervision, they don't attach. And that attachment pattern, we don't quite understand how, but we know if you are a poorly attached child, you will be a poorly attached adult. And that's exactly what happened in my study. Okay? Psychopathic traits. I'm a social worker. I'm not allowed to diagnose, but I can hold an opinion. And it is my opinion that these men and many other rapists have what we call conduct disorder, meaning their behavior is unacceptable. And we put that nice, neat little label on them until they're 18. The day they turn 18, we can actually make a diagnosis. And a lot of rapists is what we call antisocial personality disorder, or what we call psychopaths. Now, that does not mean that all psychopaths are rapists and all rapists are psychopaths. Okay, please don't be that cut and dried about it. Delinquent behavior goes back to the poor supervision that you heard about. Gender inequitable attitudes, I'm the man, I'm right. And then, as we've said, children who witness violence as kids will grow up and bash their own partners, physical, intimate partner violence. Early sexual initiation. A lot of the men in my study started sexual intercourse at age 10. Okay? Multiple sexual partners and use of alcohol and or drugs. Now, as I've said to you, a lot of those things are features of what we call conduct disorder during childhood and antisocial personality disorder from age 18 on. There are more, but those are just some of them. So, if we talk about this thing around maltreatment, remember I said I promised you I'd come back and revisit it. In my study, we know that men who have what we call a heightened sexualized childhood, okay, are more likely to become child sexual abusers than rapists. Whereas your really nasty man, okay, who rapes very young children, who breaks into your house at night and does obscene things to you and your family, he's not satisfied with just stealing your car, but needs to put a bullet in your brain or a knife into your body, is most likely a man who grew up in a very, very violent home as a child. So what I'm saying is you can make a clear distinction between molesters, and I'm not saying molesting is okay, I'm not, but on a continuum of violence, molestation is at this end, with baby rape right at the other, okay? Those kinds of guys who stick their fingers where they shouldn't, what we call pedophiles, are often subjected to child sexual abuse. Your really nasty, nasty men are subjected to regular beatings from parents. And also that these men witness violent behaviors, this physical abuse in the house, okay, watching their moms, whoever, being beaten up by another male, and watching sexual activity, what the literature would call pornography, in very overcrowded conditions. We know reality of life in South Africa and other countries, 3 generations in one room, in one space. There are many children witnessing things that children should not be seeing. Adults engaging in sexual activity, okay? And adults often at it with no regard that there might be little people in the room who shouldn't be seeing or hearing any of this. Also, another slight difference in my study, most of the men who participated, or in fact all of the men who participated in my study, were regularly beaten by their mothers. I don't want to mother knock, okay, but that is a finding from the study. These women were often single, desperate, trying to cope with I don't know how many demands and trying to raise children. My mother had many frustrations. She was short-tempered. If she hit you, she hit you. The problem was these men were also beaten at school by members of the community. That teacher beat me, beat me, beat me. I was naked. The social life of the area I lived in was beatings. And this whole thing around violent media as well. My father hit my mother. My father was always wanting meat. There was no money for meat. Then my father going to beat my mother. Why is my father lying on top of my mother? The girl, she going to lie down. I lie on top of her. We know we are supposed to take our clothes off. How does a child know that? What's he been watching? Huh? So what actually happens with a rapist is they have these wonky childhoods, they have these wonky adulthoods, and something happens one day that makes him go snap. You know, in English we talk about the straw that broke the camel's back. You know that expression. So in my research I called it spontaneous violent action. But what happens is, yes, very few rapists wake up and think, oh, well, today's a good day that I'm going to go and do. For years, they have deprivation. And don't think only poor people rape. Rich people rape too. Cuts right across, any way you want to cut it. Okay? Some of the worst serial murderers and rapists in American history come from middle-class families. But these men also learn to suppress their feelings. That happens when they're beaten. Okay? And they're initially very angry with the world, but they're directed towards themselves, very hostile about the world. And they realize, particularly baby rapists, no prospects, complete helplessness, and no power. Because remember, rape is about power. It's not about sexual gratification. Okay? And then one day, there's a very minor provocation, which I'm going to share with you in a minute. And these men then do something quite senseless, like rape, and senseless because that doesn't achieve anything except destroy somebody else's life and put him in prison. But they feel better despite this terrible act that they've now committed. So these men told me they were very angry before they raped. Some of them were very angry with men. My mind was very cross after a fight with my uncle about living arrangements. Respondent A went on to rape his 13-month-old cousin. The men in the tavern insulted me, gave me bad names, and used crude expressions about my mother's genitalia. He went on to rape a 2.5-year-old on the same day. The thing that drove me to rape is because they stole my cattle. I was angry. He went and he raped his 2-year-old neighbor. These men were also angry with women, some of whom they had had sexual relationships with, or they wanted to have sexual relationships with. I had an adulterous affair with the wife of my very close friend. She would say to me, you must go and look for a job. I'm angry. I will do something terrible to her. I actually think the wife of the very close friend gave him the boot. And he was unemployed and unemployable. And he had nowhere to go. And this was how he got back at her. Because he actually said to me, if you want to hurt a woman, you hurt her child. Respondent J, I don't have money, but she, the toddler's mother, had money, and this woman kept hounding him. She was pregnant with his child. The toddler's mother's face said she wanted sex, and I thought I will take it out on the child because of the mother. And he then raped that mother's 13-month-old infant that night. Respondent C, my sister got better treatment. I always felt that she was the better one in the house. He raped his 3-month-old niece. So, if we just look at these relationships with their victims, 5 of them were caregivers to the children that they raped. 2 of them were related, an uncle and a cousin. 3 were neighbors or acquaintances. 1 respondent was his girlfriend's daughter, okay, and another one unknown. He was one of those sexual offenders, I'm innocent, I didn't do anything wrong, every prison's got them. And the motive was revenge. As I say, 6 of these victims were children of desired or actual sexual partners. Rape often happens between the victim and a known perpetrator. Okay. Some rapes were associated with binge drinking. There was no mention of the virgin cleansing myth. and absolutely no empathy for the victims. This is what the marker is of the psychopathic behavior I spoke to you about. And I'm actually just going to read you one of them. Hold on to your seats. As it was told to me. Now, respondent E was quite interesting. He served a 3 years... no, let's go back. When he was 19, he served a 6-month sentence for anally penetrating an underage boy. At the age of 28, he went to prison for 3 years for housebreaking. He'd been out for 3 weeks. He started up this little door-to-door tin food business. He met a mom who wanted to buy some of his tins. She didn't have change. He came back in the evening when her partner was there to get his change, and a very, very heavy drinking session ensued. And this couple had a 13-month-old toddler. At some point, the parents passed out with the toddler in between them. There we go. Respondent E had been drinking with the parents of the toddler he raped. Whilst her parents were asleep, drunken coma, on an adjacent bed, the respondent took the 13-month-old from behind her mother's back. The respondent explained how he raped the child. I stood in front of the child. The child lay on the bed and I stood in front of the child on the floor. I held the child firmly with one hand. Yes, I struggled to insert my penis, but with the struggle I always pressed more. The respondent said that the sexual penetration was painful for him until he had finished, quote, breaking through. There was just resistance from her body. I pushed hard, yes, pushed very hard, but I didn't use my full power. The respondent ejaculated. He used the phrase, and then I had sex with the child, repeatedly throughout his account of the rape. When the researcher commentated that the rape must have been very painful for the child, Respondent E giggled and said, I don't know, lady. The respondent was arrested about 2 weeks after he had raped the toddler, when the mother recalled that he had been at her home. The toddler only received medical attention 2 weeks after the rape, when her parents took her to a clinic. Shocking, isn't it? Now that behavior was created. That man was not born like that. Why do I say that? Because research tells us only between 5 and 8% of rapists are actually psychotic. Okay, that they're off the wall, they don't know what they're doing at the time of the rape. This man was not mad, he was not insane. And he could remember everything he did that terrible night. And his behavior was created. He is a product of his upbringing. No one, as I say, wakes up and says, what a good idea to go out and rape a 13-month-old child. So, to conclude, from my study and these findings, as I say, some of them you can apply to other rapists. Some men experience childhood with extreme forms of maltreatment, most particularly from their mothers, the development of age-inappropriate heightened sexuality, and are without positive role models or mentors in their lives, reflecting their lack of social and community cohesion. Such maltreatment possibly affects childhood and adult attachment, as well as the development of adequate resilience in the face of adversity. The use of violence becomes normal. In response, some unemployed men possibly rape children under the age of 3 years, spontaneously, and often after binge drinking, as a need for revenge in response to their feelings of anger directed towards both men and women, not necessarily related to the young victims of the rape. So, I'm going to end how I started. The one message I would like you to take home is that this behavior is created. It is very rare that someone is born violent. And these are all things that we can be addressing if we are serious about at least reducing some of the sexual violence that is plaguing our country right now. Thank you, and I believe we've got time for questions which I will happily respond to. Thank you.